not used to presenters finishing early like that, so thanks for that, guys. Up next, we have the founder of 420 Investor, Mr. Alan Brocstein. Alan has worked in the securities industry since 1986, primarily with responsibility for managing investments in institutional environments. He, of course, has recently founded the phenomenally successful website 420 Investor. Alan is going to give you his overview thoughts on the situation vis-a-vis investing in the marijuana sector. So please welcome Alan Brocstein.
Thank you very much. I'm here to represent south of the border. And I want to first of all give a big thank you to Harry Barr. This conference has come together very quickly, and I think it's fantastic. And let's get started here. So I run 420 Investor. I have with me today several members, but also two of my teammates that are here. I don't know if they're in the room. If they are, raise their hands. Ray Manning and Braden Sutton. I think they're out at the desk. And how many of you are familiar with 420 Investor? So a handful. Okay. So I'm basically a plain vanilla financial analyst, and not even much of a marijuana person. I've been a libertarian my whole life, so I believe in legalization. I got into this about a year and a half ago, and I kind of stumbled into it quite by accident, but I just really focused in on it, and this has been a great opportunity because I've learned a lot. You've heard today from many of the speakers talk about the medical benefits. I'm sure you guys appreciate that. I did not a year and a half ago. But I think we can all agree that right now we're going through a really tremendous time for those who believe in the medical aspects here, as well as to just believe that everybody that wants to should be able to use marijuana if they're an adult. The problem that I found as an investor in the United States is that most of these companies are really they're penny stocks for the most part, and I'm speaking of the ones in the United States. So we spend a lot of time at 420 Investor trying to find the handful of companies that we think can emerge from this and take advantage of the trends. So what I'm going to talk about today are kind of the overall market psychology, how we're trying to capitalize on cannabis at 420 Investor, and kind of what I think is one final takeaway for you guys, maybe a formula for success. Okay, so the publicly traded sector in the United States started in 2009. Can anybody tell me the first company? Does anybody know? Anybody? Medical Marijuana Inc. And then the next day, or a few days later, was Cannabis Science in early 2009. Neither of these companies have gone anywhere, but they were the first ones. We've been through really a period where most of these companies were frauds for the most part. Today, we have what I would characterize as a Wild West environment in the United States. I don't want to say that about the companies here in Canada. We do pay a lot of attention to the companies in Canada, and I think that today's members that you've heard speak were actually not part of the Wild West. But we really do have a Wild West, a lot of pink sheet companies still. About half the universe is SEC filer. I'm looking forward to getting out of this Wild West mentality into a hyper-growth environment that we have in front of us. This picture, first of all, I'm partnered with a company called MarketFi that's owned by Benzinga, and they started an index. We started it earlier this year, and the idea of the index was to capture kind of what's going on in the market. We do actually have a few Canadian stocks in here as well. And this index started at a value of 100 at the beginning of 2013. And you can see how right at January 1st, it took off, and it peaked at over 1,000. So it ended the year 159. So about a 7-fold increase, which is basically a nice lifetime for most stocks, all in about 2.5 months. Since then, today it actually closed at about 438, so it's been pretty painful for the last 5 weeks. We'll talk about that. I started 420 Investor in September, and there's a good investment lesson here, by the way. We were to overlay these two charts. You kind of see how the index soared and our membership soared. Thankfully, we're not dropping quickly, and I'll talk to you more about 420 Investor if we have time. I spend a lot of time surveying our members. We usually get a pretty good response rate, maybe about 460 out of the last one, out of about 1,900 subscribers. And I can't remember my slides, but the main takeaway is that we're seeing all these people come into the market right now. They're either very young and passionate about cannabis, or they're a little bit older and they've been away from the market for a long time because of the dot-com crash, the as well as the financial collapse. So we have on our website, I think it's about 80% that characterize themselves as inexperienced or novice. So we spend a lot of time trying to bring everybody up to speed. We also have, I wish there were more women. I understand that typically websites like this, communities like this have about 5% women. We have about 10%. And what we found is we've done the survey now 4 times, and we started off, the whole skew was a little bit younger. We now have people as old as 80, I think, and the median age is like in the mid-40s, so nice demographic there. I'm not very good at PowerPoint, sorry about that. And we also have people who are betting a lot of money, and this is actually kind of disturbing. In our last survey, 40% of the people have 75% or more of their investments tied up in the marijuana sector, which is just crazy. We spend a lot of time trying to explain that concept. Okay, so that's kind of the background of psychology. We have this Wild West mentality, a lot of new people coming into the market. That's not only on our website, but I think the market in general. So, south of the border, some of the main things that we've seen last summer was 2 huge issues I'm sure you're aware of. First of all, Sanjay Gupta reversed his long-time negative view on medical marijuana. He said that it was a joke, and then he turned around and said it's real. He's done 2 specials on CNN, and that was really one of the most important things to me because it gave credibility to what all of us knew already. Anybody that had done the research, but nobody was talking about it. The second thing that came up was the Department of Justice. The citizens of Colorado and Washington had said to legalize cannabis, but nobody knew if it could move forward. This is very important because not only did it matter to the investors, it mattered more to the entrepreneurs in the state. If they didn't know if they could proceed, they weren't going to proceed. So both these things happened in August and really set off the market. I shared that index earlier. It was at 70 in the summer before these things happened. So, going ahead, looking forward, I'm going to go fast because it's very important. The main things that we're going to see in the United States for the next 3 years, and this year as well, we have the Florida election. 60% of the Florida population needs to pass the amendment, and then the state will approve medical marijuana. That's actually one of the biggest things going on right now that we're keyed on. Also, the state of Alaska, I know it's close to you guys. You can look at right out of the harbor and see it, I guess. But getting aside they'll probably legalize in November, but there's not a lot of people there. But it'll be the 3rd state. The federal. This is a big question I get, and I don't know if it's discussed up here in Canada, but we don't expect. 2018 would be the earliest that we would expect to see federal legalization. We think that I think that there's a higher chance of Canada legalizing federally before, because there's already a federal infrastructure for the medical side, although it's not properly implemented yet. Okay, so this is from Reason Magazine. It kind of gives you a picture of all the things that are going on. Obviously, the big question is, when is California going to become legal? They have a pretty bad medical system right now. That's one of the things that we found in the United States. Some of the programs like Colorado are done very well. Some of them like Michigan, Washington, D.C. have been just horrible, where they have these laws that are passed, but nobody actually accesses the program. One of the very positive things is that in the United States, the Gallup poll, 58% of people now favor legalization. It's very rare that I'll run into somebody that won't appreciate, at least on the medical side. Okay, so I promised you some formulas for success. What I'd like to talk about next is what I call the 3 Ps of pot players. And then we'll talk about a few opportunities and some risks. And we'll go through this quickly, but this is what I spend my time on, trying to help people. As I said, I'm an analyst. I've been in the market since 1986. And the thing that I found to be most important when looking at new companies, consider most of these companies venture capital. Chris from Cori just told you they raised money. We'll get to that second point. But the first thing you want to look at is you want to look at these guys like Mike, like Chris, that have been speaking to you today, Bruce Linton and Tweed. Are these the type of people you want to bet on? Because in this industry, a startup with a lot of risk, a lot of moving parts, you want to make sure that the people that you're investing with are people that you can trust and that you think that will succeed. So that's the first P. The second one is pecuniary, which is a weird way for saying money. But if you have a great idea and you're a great person, but you don't have any money, you're not going to get anything done. So we spend a lot of time looking at the capital structure to make sure these companies have the wherewithal to proceed. And finally, the business plan. A lot of investors focus on that. Is this a good business plan or not? But the reality is things change. These business plans are very flexible. A company can start in one direction and head in another. So this is important, but I actually rank it third. Okay, so I think that in the United States, unlike Canada, you can't invest in companies that actually touch marijuana. There's questions about that, but it's federally illegal. So even if it's legal within a state, anybody is breaking federal law, believe it or not, if they're to operate. So a public company has an entirely different risk level, and a rich public company even higher. So what a lot of the public companies do is they remove themselves and they do ancillary products, things like that, technology. So there is no way in the United States presently, although some people are crossing what's called the green line or getting close to the green line. So the three opportunities I'd like to talk about very briefly are what I call the build-out, which is happening. We talked about, I didn't mention it, but Massachusetts is a big one right now, where you have a big investment going on. They're building out dispensaries. They just awarded these licenses a while ago. So the build-out would be one, technology would be the second, and then niche products and services. So in the build-out, obviously Colorado and Washington have approved. So you're going from the black market, outdoor grows, whatever you want to call it, into a real business. And so these companies are doing indoor grows now. They have to build these facilities. Mike just talking about these biocubes, for instance. But there's a whole bunch of different solutions to this problem. All right, Canada, we view that as a huge opportunity. And a lot of the American companies are actually consulting with companies in Canada or providing equipment, things of this nature. Massachusetts, I just mentioned. Nevada, they're implementing a medical program right now. They've taken the applications for the licenses. They'll be awarding them later this year to whoever paid the most for them, apparently. I don't know. But under the table. But this is going to be a big opportunity because supposedly, if you are a resident of California where there's a lot of medical licenses, you'll be able to go to Nevada with an affidavit or mention your doctor's name, something to that effect, and be able to get medical cannabis in Las Vegas, the party capital of the world. So that's expected to be a very large market for tourists that come in that have medical access. And then it's likely to become federally legal in 2016. Florida, I mentioned earlier, is a huge opportunity now. This is a pretty conservative state in the United States to get medical right now. Not only is that a big opportunity because there's going to be very few dispensaries, so a lot of money per dispensary, but it also sets a precedent if it's done properly for legalization. And then I mentioned earlier, the big kahuna is California. Right, the second area is technology. And this is really a huge focus. You don't see a lot of publicly traded companies yet, but we're trying to find companies that can help with compliance, seed-to-sale tracking is what that is. Maximizing cubic feet. This is a concept if you start to research. When you're in the black market and you're trying to grow marijuana, you're not trying to maximize production, lower your input costs, do things the right way. You're trying to stay out of jail. So as the market changes, this whole concept of maximizing cubic feet becomes more important. There are companies, there's one in Israel that I follow called Reading, for instance. There's companies that focus on improving yield. It kind of ties into the maximizing cubic feet, but the idea of using genetics to get better strains of marijuana that produce more of the cannabinoids that people want, whether it's THC or CBD or something else. Lab testing, this is a great area. I know Mike just talked about his acquisition there. I saw another company just enter the space yesterday with a PR about lab testing. There aren't any real pure plays in lab testing. This is another thing. When you're in a black market and you're buying stuff on the street, there's no lab. So this is going to be a great thing for consumers because the quality of the product will be going up. This is one of the reasons why I think in Canada, if it's done properly, you guys will end up with legal lab-tested marijuana. So hopefully that'll play out. That's certainly in the United States, there's discussions over mandates, and that's being implemented. And finally, standardization. And this is what you guys don't even get concentrates legally up here under the new system or edibles, but that's a big trend. Hopefully Canada will address that. It's a massive oversight. In the United States, this is the most rapidly growing part of the market, and in that, you need standardization. So these are technology plays, anything that helps with any of these areas that I mentioned. And finally, there's niche products. One of the big ones in the United States is vape pens or table vaporizers. I know many of you are familiar with that, but there are public companies that offer these devices. Payment processing, not a problem in Canada because it's going to be federally legal under a medical program. program, but in the United States, there's people wheelbarrowing around cash. I was in Colorado, it was the weirdest thing. They wanted my credit card so bad that, I was in Colorado, so I can say this. I made a purchase, and I actually got a discount because I used my credit card. Who here has ever gotten a discount for using a credit card? But if you go into a dispensary in Colorado, that can happen. And this is one of the most interesting areas, and there are some public companies that are starting to touch on it, but that's recruitment and training. I mentioned all this change going on in the United States. It might not apply to Canada, but if you're opening up a dispensary in Massachusetts, you need somebody that can talk to the customers and somebody that knows how to grow, whatever all the aspects are in the industry. Where are you going to get those people from? So there are companies that are working on helping companies to recruit and attract employees and also to train them to do things properly. Okay, so I talked about some great stuff. I always talk about the risks. The risks are just terrible because we have a lot of these companies that are really fly-by-night operators just looking to take advantage of investors. So we spend a lot of our time trying to find those. Today, this slide was outdated this morning because the sixth company was taken by the SEC with a suspension, a 2-week suspension. And I have, unfortunately, 2 of my companies that I actually like were suspended as well. The SEC doesn't ever say why it happened, really. They put out a press release that doesn't say much. Some people, I won't say this publicly, but some people say that the SEC wanted to cool the market off, and that's what's going on. I don't think that's the whole issue. FINRA still allows companies that are totally illegitimate to trade. I don't understand what's going on. I've turned companies into the SEC, they keep trading. So I've called the SEC, they don't want to talk, but yet they halt some of the really good stocks. I won't say that about the one today. But I have a picture of Grow Life, PHOT. That's, I think, one of the leading companies in the space. They were halted on April 10th. That was the same day that another halt was ending of another company that I thought was, that I still think is a good company. So there may be something to that political thing. It really has impacted the sector. I showed you that slide earlier where the market was at 1,009 by our measure, and now it's at 438. We've had 4 halts, and I think that's a big part of it. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. I didn't use the word bubble, but we were in a bubble. I was using that term a month ago. We were definitely, anytime something goes from 159 to 1,000, that is a bubble in and of itself. But I think that in the United States and in Canada, we're going to see this legal expansion play out. It's going to have its pitfalls like these SEC halts or problems where Canada puts in a system that doesn't even include edibles or concentrates. But we are moving forward. I don't think that the investors fully understand what it's like to go from a black market type of environment to one where you have legitimate business people, marketing people from Procter & Gamble, whatever it is that want to get into this industry for whatever reason, they're going to employ technology and do all the things to make this a real business. And then finally, one area that in the United States that's a big problem is you can't go to the bank to get a loan to build a dispensary, for instance. Or there's some other aspects as well, but the banking system is totally fragmented. We are starting a new service called 420 Funders to connect private companies with private investors. If anybody wants to talk about that, I will. But the idea is it doesn't really exist right now. It's kind of weird that I'm coming up with it, but there is nowhere for these small companies to gain access. And this is not a big business right now. This is a bunch of small businesses in the United States and here in Canada as well that are trying to capitalize on cannabis. So the 5 ways that I would say if you're looking to get involved in the market is you can try to trade the public stocks, but and they come off a lot, but they're very expensive. If you're going to do it, I'd say focus on higher quality. A lot of people bought these names that sounded great, but they're losing money. I mentioned some technology and service ideas that I think make sense. One of the things that I caution people about is don't get married to these companies today. They represent a very small part of the market. We're going to have new entrants in the market, so just try to learn the market and be ready for those new companies. And finally, I think that private companies, the valuations are much lower, so I think that's the way to play if you're able to do that. I think we should have some time, I think. Does anybody have any questions? In the back. You gotta hurry, we got 1 minute, 9 seconds or something.
We got actually about 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
I would like to ask you if you notice there is a difference between marijuana and the people are getting arrested for marijuana.
Okay, so that's a Canadian, that H is Canadian. I don't think
Yeah, but
there's any
there's
difference.
people in jail because that.
No, I understand, but I guess I don't understand the question. In Canada, they spell it with a H. I don't quite get it. I'm from Texas, so marijuana either way. I'm sorry, I don't really understand that question. But
Cannabis.
there you go.
When do you think you were going to see the first companies listed on the senior exchanges, NASDAQ, NMS, or something serious?
NASDAQ, what was the second part?
NASDAQ, NMS. When are companies going to be listed on the senior exchanges? And,
So in the Canadian exchanges, I don't know the answer. I mean,
U.S.
in the U.S., they're working on it. There's a couple things that have to happen. You have to meet the requirements, first of all, and NASDAQ has to sign off on it. And there's some political risk to doing that, from what I understand. We're not going to know. I'm talking to people that are in the process right now, and it's basically you get one bullet to fire, and so they want to be very careful about their timing. There's one company out there. They're based in, I think, Seattle or Bellevue, I think is the actual city. It's called MSync. They make a $10 vape pen, but they do some other things as well. If you really want to find out what the rules are and who's really going to maybe be the first to try, they are a SEC filer, OTCQB right now, and they have laid out all the criteria. The only one that they're missing, according to them, is the share price. You have to have, I don't know if it's $4, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number, but you can get the higher share price very easily. It's called a reverse split. That word is kind of a bad word in general, but if you're doing it to get to the NASDAQ. So it's a tough question. I'm aware of one company that wants to go straight to the NASDAQ. I'm willing to say that they're doing it, but I'm not willing to say that they will be successful in that. But that's a great question. I think that's going to really add a lot. And what I should have mentioned in my slides, I did a presentation in Atlanta I don't know, has anybody heard of Bob Prechter, Elliott Wave Theory? These are legitimate institutional type investors. And I'm lucky, I get a lot of people calling me all the time. And a year ago, nobody cared about this stuff. It was pre-Wild West. Now we're in the Wild West. You have conservative investors who are saying, I'm not going to buy this stuff, but this is the time to be learning about it. And so that was a great question, because when you see a NASDAQ listing, it's going to really excite people. Is there another question? Okay, I do have, okay, go ahead.
I was just curious, I'm not a citizen yet, and I've been looking into trying to start a business to be able to become one, because there's a way to do that, and I haven't found a way to be able to do that in this space.
To become a citizen
Well, to be
of the United States?
No, of Canada.
Oh, I really don't know about that. I'm sorry. I don't even know how to become a citizen of the United States. It's really hard. You got to be born right, I guess. Sorry, I don't know the answer.
Okay, it's been a real prevention of me starting a business here because of the citizenship implications. So if you can't answer that, I understand.
I'm sorry. I wish I could. Okay, so if anybody's interested, so 420 Investor, the one thing I want to tell you is I don't work for the companies. I represent the little guy. I have my whole life, basically. I know I worked on Wall Street, and that's a four-letter word, but I really hated it. I quit Wall Street, got away from there as quickly as I could. But I do have a flyer. It's a no-risk proposition for you. The first month's a half off. If you don't like it, you can get your full money back within 30 days. But I just want to make sure everybody knows there's a lot of companies out there with a different business model. They work for the companies. They're trying to promote these smaller companies. I don't work that way. The only way I get paid is from people who subscribe to our service. And we have 1,900 people. Thank God they're not depending on just me. It's really a lot of user-generated content. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to me today, and I'll be back at 4:20.